All right, Nuggets fans, welcome into Pickaxe and Roll, brought to you by our good friends over at BetOnline. I am your host, Ryan Blackburn at NBA Blackburn on Twitter, part of the Mile High Sports Podcast Network, and I am here. I am ready to kick it off tonight for another post-All-Star break stretch here. I've been covering this league for a while, even though I'm just 28 years old, and this is where it really starts to get good. For most teams, this is where you start to lock in, you start to try to get as healthy as possible, and you really start to work on some of those things that you're going to be trying to do in the playoffs and kind of coming into focus with those playoff rotations and things like that. Everybody's competing for spots in the playoff picture. Fortunately, the Nuggets haven't had to really fight too hard most of these years because they have been a pretty good team. But for a lot of these teams, especially kind of in that, I'll say, fringe rate, like that range where you're in the play-in tournament or you're just outside the play-in tournament, like this is do or die. This is the right time to really kind of get kicking into gear. And for that reason, the Nuggets are going to have a pretty tough schedule. We're going to talk about it all. I've got some numbers here that I'm looking at. Some stats that I pulled for this upcoming stretch. We'll talk about those in the second segment. Third segment, we'll talk about the game that the Nuggets are playing tonight against the Charlotte Hornets, who just won against the Los Angeles Lakers last night. So we'll have to take that one seriously, of course, to see what happens and then what the Nuggets are going to be facing tonight. But first segment, we're going to be talking about the Nuggets getting healthier. We'll go over some of the injury report things that happened and just some expectations that I have over the course of these next few weeks. My name is Ryan Blackburn. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. Marcel Zero is here saying, let's go. Abdul Hafiz says, damn, 28, your manner of speech definitely doesn't sound like 28 years old. I've been told... first of all, it's just practice. This is definitely a practice thing where you do this for a long time and you continue to get better over the course of many years of training. But yeah, I definitely understand that. I don't talk like your normal 28-year-old in Colorado. That's for sure. I don't know if that's a good thing or not, by the way. Boyan is here. Hello to Boyan. Marcel's back at it saying, I can't unsee that Lakers Hornets game. Terrible. Fun fact, I watched 0 seconds of that game, and I'm extremely happy to say that I did. That was one that was actually rescheduled due to the LA fires earlier this year. So it probably shouldn't have happened, if we're being honest. It should not have been a game that happened, but Lakers had to deal with it, and so did the Hornets. And the Hornets, they took advantage of that for sure. We'll get into it all. I want to make sure to pay some bills first. This podcast, as you know, it's brought to you by the good folks over at BetOnline. They are your number one source for online betting and the world's most trusted betting platform in 2025. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, BetOnline is your ultimate game day companion. They've got a large selection of odds on everything from NBA, college basketball, NHL, UFC, from every three-pointer to hat trick. BetOnline has you covered with odds, stats, and more for every game, every play, and every single win. Make sure to go check them out at betonline.ag. BetOnline, the game starts here. All right, let's get into this. Let's talk about the actual injury report that came out yesterday. So if you guys didn't know, I posted my article, my preview for tonight's game, what to watch for in Denver Nuggets versus Charlotte Hornets. I'll drop it into the live chat now so that if anybody wants to follow along, then they absolutely can. It's not going to be hyperlinked, so sorry. But yeah, so I do this every game effectively, unless they're on the second night of a back-to-back, in which case I'm going to save myself. But for this one tonight, Denver had a few guys on the injury report, but 3 starters that are probable in Michael Porter, Jamal Murray, and Aaron Gordon. Peyton Watson is still out. Vlatko Čančar is still out. Deron Holmes is still out. But we got some good news from practice yesterday. I wasn't able to go. I had some obligations that I had to take care of. But I did hear through the grapevine that Deron Holmes practiced for the first time, took part in parts of practice for the first time. That's a huge, huge deal. So congratulations to him and the rehab that he's been going through. Never easy to come back from an injury that you expected to be out for a long period of time. I experienced not to the degree of a torn Achilles, but when I tore my uh, labrum in my right shoulder, trying to come back for football was very difficult. So I understand how like painful that can be, and how much stress can be put on you when you're finally coming back to that. But good for him for making it happen. He's only took part in parts of practice, to be clear, but still exciting for him, I think, to be a part of things. He is not expected to play for the rest of the season. Let me be clear on that. I don't think that he is expected to suit up. If he gets back way sooner than I think people expect, then maybe we talk about it. Maybe it's something that they actually discuss. I remember Brandon Clark of Memphis, he sustained an injury to his Achilles at a certain point. I think it was in the playoffs. Or no, it was he got hurt on that March 2nd game in 2023 for the Memphis Grizzlies back in the day. And then he was able to play right at the end of the next season. But that was kind of a full 12 months or so of recovery, like 11, 12 months. Deron Holmes tore his Achilles in like the middle of July or early July, middle of July. And then I think he had surgery a few days later. So like the actual timing of it doesn't really make sense for him to come back anytime soon. So just make it clear to everybody, do not expect Deron Holmes to be back this season. And that's okay. Like, you want to give him as much time as possible to be his best self when he does return. And you never want to rush a guy, especially for a team that has playoff aspirations like the Nuggets do. But he took part in parts of practice. That's a great sign. Vlatko Cancar took part in some parts of practice. That is also a great sign. He is still out. Peyton Watson is still out. Watson will probably be gone for another couple weeks. But Vlatko Cancar, it's very possible that he's back within the week. Like, very possible that he's available. So as great as Zeke Naji has done and stepped up over the course of these last few weeks for Denver, maybe Vlatko Cancar could also be a candidate to step up for that backup forward spot. Hunter Tyson has, I think, mostly not done well enough in that spot to really justify sticking out there for all this time. So Zeke Naji has actually taken like a good opportunity here to be able to do it. But just in general, Denver looks like they're getting healthier. I'm not sure what Vlatko's going to look like when he does come back. He was already looking extremely rusty at the beginning of the season. He had just started to play a little bit better right before he hurt his knee. So Denver has to be cautious with them. They can't rush him back. Of course, he doesn't want to rush back. But this is an opportunity. This is like one of Vlatko, I think, his final opportunities to stick around in the NBA full time, because he has been dealing with a whole bunch of injuries throughout his career. He's always been kind of a fringe rotation guy, a 10th, 11th man. You can do that when you're younger, but once you are in the kind of 27, 28, 29 range, teams are always going to be looking to get younger if they can. So I think it's important for him to take advantage of this moment if at all possible. So I'm rooting for him. He's such a nice guy. He's such a very kind person. So hopefully he's able to be back out there, and we can talk about a nice, fun return story at that point. But either way, this is kind of where this is all leading. Is Denver is now getting a little bit healthier. Russell Westbrook is off the injury report entirely. And that is exciting, of course, for the Nuggets. They should be very happy about that. It does bring some questions. And we've gone through these questions, of course. 6 starters for 5 spots. Jokic, of course, is starting. Murray, of course, is starting. Those aren't question marks. Porter is, of course, starting. Aaron Gordon, I think, is, of course, starting. If he's healthy, he's going to be starting. It just doesn't make any sense to do otherwise. So it is important to, it's important to figure it out. Wow. Okay, Shams has actually just tweeted like a few minutes ago, or like 1 minute ago, that overwhelming sentiment is that the Los Angeles Lakers should not have failed Mark Williams on his physical. Interesting. That's fascinating. So that pertains to tonight, of course. We'll talk about that a little bit in the third segment when we talk about the Hornets specifically, but we'll circle back to that. But we'll that's everything is dramatic at this point. Either way, so the Nuggets have 6 starters for 5 spots. They have Russell Westbrook, who fit in extremely well with what the Nuggets needed and was an absolute value add to what the Nuggets were doing in the like right before their win streak, effectively. Like, he was being a part of things. Like, he had absolutely been helpful. And the plus minus with him and Jokic on the floor is clearly notable. I think at this point that he should go back to the bench. Michael Malone was asked that yesterday at practice. He didn't relinquish any information on what the starters would be. I don't know if he's going to be willing to do that. I don't know if he's going to be willing to bench Russ. I think that for the good of the team, Christian has to stay out there. They have to continue to capitalize on what he's been providing, the fast break opportunities that he provides, the length and athleticism that he provides at the 2 spot, as opposed to Russ, where you then move Jamal Murray to the 2. It should be a counter that the Nuggets use. It shouldn't be the be-all, end-all. Like, if it were up to me for the Nuggets, I would be running the rotation where Westbrook comes in at about the 7-minute mark of every single quarter. And he finishes the first quarter, the second quarter, and the third quarter. And then he comes back in at the 7-minute mark of the fourth quarter until about the 4-minute mark or so. And then if he continues to play well, then he closes the final 4 minutes of the game. And if you do the rotation that way, then you've got, like, he'll play about 24 minutes a game, which I think is a reasonable number. And most of those, like the vast majority, if not 100% of those minutes, would be with Nikola Jokic. And that, to me, is the most important thing. You want to make sure that you're playing him in the Jokic minutes. You're trying to avoid as many non-Jokic minutes as possible with him out there. And I think that that's why he was starting in the first place, was because they saw the numbers. They saw the 2-man numbers with those 2 on the floor, and we're like, okay, well, we can't break these guys up. I think that there's a creative way to get them out there at the same time that doesn't include Russ starting. I think that Christian should be starting. I think that he should be playing more minutes at this stage. I think it's better for the team going forward, like both present and future. And I think it's better for Christian to just say, hey, we believe in you. You're going to be our starter. We're going to try to make things work. Your minutes aren't going to be jacked around. You're a very large part of what we're doing here. Because I think he's earned it. I think during this entire stretch, he has been so good that you can't take him off the floor at this point. So I'm curious to see what they're going to do, how they're going to handle it. But I should have put together kind of a projected rotation for what I've wanted to be able to throw up on the screen. I haven't done that, but I do think that, like, I kind of explained it. Murray should be staggering with the second unit at the beginning of every quarter. So, like, beginning of the second, beginning of the fourth quarter, he should be out there as the primary point guard next to probably Julian Strawther, maybe even Christian Brown, and then Peyton Watson when he returns, or Zeke Naji, and Aaron Gordon, and DeAndre Jordan, and guys like that. Like, Denver should be trying to get to those lineups, those particular combinations. I realized I listed like 6 or 7 players there. But what Denver's been able to do over this past stretch is they've been playing a lot of starters with the bench when Jokic is not out there. So I think they should keep trying to do that. And that way you could keep Russ with the second unit, like or on like keep him on the bench, but then play him with Jokic and play him at the end of each quarter, the middle to end of each quarter. And I think that that would be beneficial to the team. But it should be fun. I'm curious to see how it goes. Russ has been very valuable for what the Nuggets have provided, and the connection that he has with Jokic, you should be trying to play those guys together. So we'll see how Michael Malone and company handle it, but I'm curious to see what it looks like. When we come back, I've got some notes on Denver's final 27 games, some stats, some numbers, some things that people are going to need to know heading into the final 27. We'll be right back here on Pickaxe and Roll. All right, we are back. Pickaxe and Roll. Ryan Blackburn here. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. Appreciate the love and support on the podcast, folks. Make sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button if you are following along. Would really, really appreciate it. Okay, let's talk about the strength of schedule. There's a lot of stuff that I think could go into it. I had initially written for the newsletter that I do for Locked On that the Nuggets have the second highest strength of schedule in the NBA. That was true before the singular game last night, which actually changed Denver's strength of schedule to fifth highest because of the changing like stats between the Charlotte Hornets and Los Angeles Lakers because their records changed last night. So things are still it's a tight margin, not necessarily like Denver's still in the top 5. They have the 5th hardest strength of schedule remaining according to Tankathon. Tankathon does a really good job for a lot of reasons. Most of it is about the lottery, the ping pong balls that like are projected to be there. But in general, they have a good thing for strength of schedule because it's just nice to have a good visual of the teams that you're facing, the team, like the games that you have remaining and everything in between. So Denver, hard strength of schedule remaining. 20 of the 27 games that they play are against above 500 teams, meaning that like those teams are going to be trying down the stretch. Those teams are trying to make the playoffs. Those teams are not like shutting it down or anything of that nature. Very few teams in this stretch actually shut it down. And the teams that you would have expected to at the beginning of the season, I'm thinking like Portland. Like they're good enough that they can still be a threat. Utah, like when they play their veterans, they can still be a threat. I do think that those teams will probably try to strategically shut down their veterans at some point and really try to emphasize the young guys when they can. But I don't think that it's going to be that crazy in the games that Denver doesn't play the plus 500 teams. Like I'm looking at it here. The other games that I'm talking about is Charlotte tonight, the Wizards, Portland, Chicago, Utah, San Antonio, and there was another one that I missed. Phoenix at one point. So Phoenix will be trying, that's for sure. Most of those other teams I don't think will be. All right. Boyan here, he had kind of tangenting in the comments. I'll answer this question. How about this crazy lineup for the playoffs? Russ, Christian Brown, Peyton Watson, Zeke Naji, Aaron Gordon. Defense would be insane if they put up some 3-pointers. The offense would be crazy in a bad way for that one. And what I found, it's a good lineup in theory because you try to slow down the scoring as much as possible for both teams. It's a counter. Maybe it's something that the Nuggets try to use. But I remember in the Minnesota series that the most time where Denver was panicked in that series was when they could not score. Now, most of the time that was like with Jamal Murray out there, with even Nikola Jokic out there, Michael Porter out there. You have some good players for sure. But I do genuinely remember the times where Denver panicked most were when they could not score, when they were stuck on the same score for much of that time. I think that if Denver just continues to put up points, they'll be able to get through it. Definitely like kind of an abnormal way of thinking from what most people like to think about the playoffs being, like where you just lock in on defense and try to get as many points as possible with good defensive lineups. I'm at the point where, because of who Denver is, you just want to keep scoring and then try to get as much defense as possible into the game when you can. Ozair says, "Hello, Ryan from Pakistan. Loved your last video. Stats were mind blowing. Work you did was A1. Thank you, man. I appreciate it. The last show that I did, gosh, what was it? Let me just. Oh no, I deleted the. I deleted the thing. No, there were some good stats that I threw into that video. So make sure to go check out the last episode of Pickaxe and Roll if you missed it. Do really appreciate it, Ozair. Thank you very much. Okay, let's get back to some of these notes. Again, 20 of the 27 games the Nuggets play are against plus 500 teams. That's a lot. It's just not a lot of rest that the Nuggets are going to be able to have. And 14 of those games are against top 6 teams in either conference. Now, that might make sense just because like it's the right proportion there. But if you think about it, 14 out of Denver's 27 games are against the best of the best, the cream of the crop, the teams that you would expect to give Denver the most issues, the top 6 in either conference. 14 home games they have, 13 road games. They've got 5 more back-to-backs on the season. There's a lot of question marks. There's a lot of stuff to have to figure out there. Mr. Exquisite Nugget with the super chat, he comes in and says, will it be CB or who will guard Luka for the Lakers versus Denver? Kind of a pivot, but Denver will be playing the Lakers on Saturday. Yeah, I think Christian will guard Luka if he's starting. I assume that he will start for that game. Maybe this is something where maybe Russ starts tonight and then Christian starts tomorrow, or not tomorrow, Saturday, and then they just kind of play it by ear. But I do think that Christian, if they play their main normal starters, will guard Luka at the beginning, and then Aaron Gordon will guard LeBron. And that's just how that will go. But thank you for the super chat. I appreciate it. 5 more back-to-backs, as mentioned prior. 6 rest advantage games. This is something that people don't fully appreciate. So often the NBA is dictated by rest and travel. It's like, how rested are you? Did you fly before your previous game? When Denver's able to take a breath and actually sit down and not have to go anywhere for a significant period of time, then they are better off. Like just not having to travel, not having to do that. Like minimizing the number of flights that people take is very important. And also just being more rested than the opposing team is important. I think like it's not a guarantee that you'll win those games, but you're just in a much better position if you are. So Denver has 6 rest advantage games and 3 rest disadvantage games for the remainder of the season. So that kind of balances it out, like how difficult their schedule is just a little bit. Before the All-Star break, Denver had just 4 rest advantage games and 8 rest disadvantage games. So they were getting it the other direction prior to the All-Star break. Most of the time, they were coming into these games tired. They were not necessarily in a good spot where they, like, in comparison to the opposing team, they did get the benefit of some injury luck when facing some of these opposing teams. But I do think that, like, the actual rest aspect of it, not surprised that Denver was missing some guys by the end of it. Although, again, should probably give a lot of credit to Jamal Murray. 55 points in the final game before the All-Star break. That's a big deal. Like, it takes so much mental fortitude and ability to lock in to be able to do that. And he had a good reason to, because of the trash talking that they were doing to him. But it does take a lot there. So when you are at a rest disadvantage, or when everybody's tired, any little minor thing could be the difference between a win or a loss. And at this point, because of Denver's like actual standings, they're 36 and 19. This schedule doesn't really appeal to me in the fact that like Denver's going to have a hard time because 20 of the 27 games they play are against plus 500 teams, and all the different reasons. Like I had talked about, hey, Denver should try to go 18 and 9. They should try to win 54 games exactly. You don't want to win that many more than that. I don't know if Denver's going to have a choice in that matter. Like this schedule is putting it so that it's going to be very difficult for them to maintain that spot. Now, in some of the previous stuff that I've talked about, I don't know if Denver needs to maintain the 3 seed. Like if they're the 4 seed, then so be it. Like they'll have to play OKC at some point. Whatever it is, like however hard this schedule is, Denver's got to be healthy. That's like end of story. That's the only thing that matters at the end of the day. How healthy and ready to go is the Nuggets playoff rotation when the playoffs roll around. And so however they can handle it, they should do what they can. Because of the health that I talked about in the first segment, I think it's important for the Nuggets to rest their guys throughout the final 27 games. And when you have 6 starters, it's a little bit easier to do that. Like hypothetically, Denver plays their first 5 games of this post-All-Star break stretch. And you say, okay, Aaron, it's time for you to get a little bit of a break here. Take a game off. You'll come back next game and you'll start, of course. But this is a good way to get Russell Westbrook into the starting unit. And then you play Russ, Jamal, Christian, Michael Porter, and Nikola Jokic. And then Aaron comes back, and then you're like, hey, Christian, you're looking a little bit banged up here. We're going to get Russ in here. You're going to take a game off now as well. And like these guys may not be super excited to hear that, but tough luck because the playoffs are what's most important. And if Denver can get through these games, and if they feel like the bench is good enough and the production that they're getting from there is good enough, like, hey, Jalen Pickett stepping up and being a factor for Denver on the second unit would be a big deal. Julian Strawther continuing to do things. Peyton Watson coming back eventually. If they're able to make that happen, then I think that they should try to get guys as many rest opportunities as possible during these final 27 games. That's tough with how tough the schedule is, but I think you got to think about the players' health and the players' actual energy levels before anything else. Like, it's not about just winning. That's what the pre-All-Star break portion of the schedule is for. The post-All-Star break portion is playing great basketball and getting as rested as possible. So we'll see if they can do that. But I do think that's something I'm thinking about for sure. All right. When we come back, we're going to talk about Nuggets Hornets tonight. That's pretty much all I have for any schedule stuff. I predicted 18 and 9. Based off of looking at this, I think I'd actually go 17 and 10 for what I expect the Nuggets to do. And they win about 53 games in total. What do you think Denver does? What's their schedule? What's their record going to be post All-Star break? Let me know in the comments what you think. When we come back, we're talking Nuggets Hornets. We'll be right back here on Pickaxe and Roll. All right, final segment, Pickaxe and Roll. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. Denver is back tonight playing against Charlotte. They've got some other games that they'll play after that. They play versus the Lakers. Then they go on the road for a 4-game road trip. They've got a tough schedule, as I mentioned, but immediately out of the break, they've got 2 home games. And Charlotte being the first one is a break. Charlotte being on the second night of a back-to-back is also a break. But I will say, Denver did not face LaMelo Ball in the first matchup of the season. They were facing Vasa Micic, and then Micic got hurt. He's no longer a part of the Charlotte Hornets. He went to Phoenix in the Yusuf Nurkic trade. So you'll see a familiar face that you're not expecting to see in Charlotte colors in this particular game. Should be interesting. Charlotte's starting, or at least they did start this last night. LaMelo Ball, Nick Smith Jr., Josh Green, Miles Bridges, and Mark Williams. Often they were playing a little bit bigger. They were playing a little bit slower, not necessarily having a whole bunch of athletes, or they were having more athletes, but they were not having a lot of shooting. When you've got LaMelo Ball out there and you move Miles Bridges to the 4, you've got enough shooting. Charlotte yesterday took 53 three-pointers. LaMelo Ball took 13. Miles Bridges took 11. Nick Smith took 11. So Denver has to be careful, man. They have to be careful here. They have to be able to run the Hornets off the three-point line. But what they will do, they'll jack up bad threes. That's something that they absolutely will do. If you give them the opportunity, they will do it. You have to make sure that they're bad. You cannot let them be good shots, because if they put themselves into that position over and over again, again, they're threes, and if they're bad shots, they're still probably about 35% shots. So 65% of the time, there will be a defensive rebounding opportunity. If Denver can grab that, there will be running opportunities as well. The Lakers yesterday had 24 fast break points, and I think the Nuggets are even better on the fast break than the Lakers are. Actually, I think that's pretty clear. Dr. Van Nostrand here effectively says LaMelo was cooking Luka last night. That is absolutely true. I watched some of the highlights for sure, and LaMelo, he liked to go at Luka. Who would he go at in that situation for this particular game? I think he'd probably attack Murray. I think he'd probably attack Michael Porter. Those guys are a little bit better in isolation defense, especially with where Luka's at physically, than where Luka was last night. But I do think that Denver can handle those guys going at them in isolation a little bit. I do remember from the first matchup, Miles Bridges was going at Jamal Murray a lot. Took advantage of that matchup. Jamal did not play well on the defensive end. So Denver's going to have some other opportunities there. Russell Westbrook didn't play in that first matchup, so we'll see if he can be out there and provide a little bit of defense, although I think that LaMelo could be a guy that draws some fouls against a guy like Russ. So have to pay attention to that for sure. Although, Hornets only attempted 17 free throws. They did go 16 of 17, but Miles Bridges had 7, Mark Williams had 4, LaMelo Ball had 4, and Seth Curry off the bench had 2. Yusuf Nurkic played 18 minutes off the bench in this last game, had 0 points, attempted 3 threes, didn't make any of them. Those are the only shots that he did attempt. Had 8 rebounds, 7 assists, a steal, and 2 blocks. So he's still trying to figure out how to fit in. And I think the Nuggets have an opportunity here with where he is at, with where the rest of their team is at. I'm surprised. Moussa Diabate is somebody that I would hope that Charlotte played if I were the Hornets fan. The fact that he didn't play in this last game, he was just a DNP-CD, that's a good thing for Denver. Tijane Saloon, their 6th overall pick, played 18 minutes last night, played the backup 4 for them. Yusuf Nurkic played the backup 5, so there's no real spot for Moussa Diabate. That is a tanking effort thing for Charlotte, in my opinion. If this were a meritocracy, Diabate would be playing over Saloon. He is not good. That doesn't mean he can't hurt Denver. So Denver's got to take advantage of that. We will see what happens. They know who Yusuf Nurkic is. They have to adjust to him. I think that DeAndre Jordan should be a pretty good matchup against Nurkic in this particular game. We'll see what ultimately happens. But Mark Williams is their starting center, and he played okay in this last game. He was a -5 when the rest of the starters were mostly neutral to positives. He had 7 shots in 29 minutes, had 9 rebounds. It's funny to see the videos between him and Dalton Connect after the game where those guys got traded for each other, and they're just laughing about this thing because, how could you not laugh at a situation as absurd as this. Apparently, Mark Williams is healthy or healthy enough that the trade should have gone through. It should not have been denied by the Lakers doctors. At least that's something that was put out by XL and his agency. So I'm curious to see what happens there. Denver is like they have a whole bunch of guys that excel, including Jokic and Murray. Or Murray was there. He might be a clutch now. I'm not sure about that. But either way, Mark Williams, second out of back-to-back, going up against Nikola Jokic. The Nuggets should be in a pretty good place where they can win this game going away. I'm not sure what it's ultimately going to look like, of course, but I think the Hornets are a much better team. They have a higher baseline when LaMelo Ball is out there versus when he's not out there. He does take wild shots. He does do some crazy things. He doesn't make great decisions all the time, but he does have the talent to kind of overcome that. So he is the kind of player that hurts this Nuggets defense. So I'm curious to see how they handle it, what they're able to do, if Denver's able to lock in on the defensive end enough to give their offense an opportunity to shine. I do not think that the Nuggets offense will struggle as often as the Lakers did. Like Luka Doncic had a horrible game from a statistical standpoint. 14 points on 18 shots, 1 of 9 from 3, 8 assists to 6 turnovers, and he was still a plus 13 in that game in 33 minutes. Their bench, not good enough. Denver's bench is not exactly like that much better, but if Russell Westbrook can come in and provide a little bit of energy, if Zeke Naji continues to play well, Julian Strawther has an opportunity in this game to get free, there should be an opportunity for Denver to win this one going away, especially because they are on a back-to-back. The Hornets are. So we will see how they handle it. Anybody have any questions on this Nuggets-Hornets game? Because I don't really have much more, if I'm being honest. This is a pretty straightforward entry into this part of the season because Denver, like they've got an opportunity in these final 27 games to solidify their spot as the 3rd seed in the West. They might even jump up to the 2nd seed. They might fall down if the schedule becomes too difficult, but this is a good warm-up game for them. The Hornets, again, it should be a relatively easy matchup based off of what they have coming up for them. So hopefully they don't overlook the Hornets. But I do think that this will be a good opportunity for them to kind of get going again. We'll see how they handle it. Mr. Exquisite Nugget asks, will CB be on LaMelo? I don't see any other option, or not option, but I don't see any other reason to go a different direction. If Christian Brown starts and Russell Westbrook comes off the bench, Christian Brown should be guarding LaMelo. Jamal Murray will be guarding Nick Smith Jr. And then, who's the 3 in this game? Josh Green. I assume Michael Porter will guard Josh Green and Aaron Gordon will guard Miles Bridges. They'll get all cross-matched because that's just how it works. Charlotte is pretty small other than Mark Williams. So I would expect Denver to really try to get on the glass and do all those things and try to really abuse the inside of this thing. But the Hornets, they're going to take a lot of threes. Christian's got to be ready for that. We will see whether they can handle it. Dr. Van Nostrand says Hornets are on 2-7 on the 2nd game of back-to-backs this season. So they haven't handled it as well as Denver has. We'll see if that can continue to go. All right. I think that is going to do it, folks. I think that's going to do it for this episode of Pickaxe and Roll, brought to you by the good folks over at BetOnline. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Always appreciate everybody for hanging out in these mornings. I will be back tomorrow after the game tonight. We'll do a recap. I'll just try to provide some quick little insights. Probably won't be as long as this show today, but it should be fun regardless. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button on the way out. Would really, really appreciate it. I will talk to you guys very, very soon.